Well, hello and welcome to the background of the Business Renovator. I'm your host, Coach Phil. Technology has reared its ugly head, and there's a lesson to be learned in here. So today is supposed to be about um, the forecast to travel empty. So currently, right now, my fork is a little bit empty. You can see the inner workings of the background, which isn't working. Anyway, let's see if I can get my sponsor up and running. Be right back. Welcome back. Thanks to Focal Point, which is a business coaching, training, and executive coaching company with offices around the world, 200 or so. And I am one of those office holders in a wonderful country of Canada with clients in a variety of different places over the last 14 years of being one of the certified Brian Tracy Focal Point coaches. Now, let's just see if I can get this. This app is wonderful. I just haven't quite figured out where all the pieces are yet. So bear with me as I bring up Brian's book. Matter of fact, I'm going to literally bring it up right here today. Here it is, Customer Delight 365 by my buddy, Brian Monahan. And the quote I've got here is by Ray Kroc. And what Ray talks about is if you work just for money, you'll never make it. But if you love what you're doing, you'll always put the customer first. Success will be yours, Ray Kroc. Brian's take on that is Ray Kroc essentially says that customer delight hinges on your delight, which is the ultimate win-win. The customer gets what they want, you're enjoying yourself, and you're making more money doing it, which begs the question, if you love what you do, why isn't it called TGIM instead of TGIF? Great question, Brian. I was listening to a podcast earlier today by a fellow by the name of Pat Hazel. I met Pat because of COVID. Everybody was looking for different ways to live their life and do their things. And Pat was often hanging out on the Emerging Sales Winners live streaming that was happening daily and hosted by the great Jeffrey Gitomer of Gitomer Nation. And Pat's wisdom and his humor showed up frequently throughout many of those live streams that he was participating in. And one of the things that he said, or didn't actually say it orally, but wrote in there was yes, as an acronym, you expect sales, because we were predominantly a sales group that were there. And I took that up and tweaked it a little bit because I'm a little bit broader than just sales, but I do love the sales profession and helping people um, succeed in that profession, no matter whether they're selling a product or service or ideas or leading a team organization. Selling is everywhere. And I just like to be part of that and help a few people along the way. So I wanted to adjust it though to be more broad because I don't always just deal with salespeople. I'm dealing with athletes and entrepreneurs and leaders of companies and organizations. So yes, you expect sales didn't quite fit. So I tweaked it. And he called that today when I was chatting with him via Facebook Messenger. He thanked me for amplifying his creativity. He is a brilliantly creative individual. So I changed it to suit my situation a little bit better, I put it to yes, you expect success. So I encourage you to expect success. There was a challenge I put out middle of third week of March this year. I came across a really terrific audio program. Well, not even a program, just a 28-minute segment with Brian Tracy talking about self confidence and actually developing it. And he talked in 28 minutes. There's so many nuggets that 30 days couldn't justify. But I did the challenge for myself for my own personal reasons. And I encouraged others that I work with and know and care about to take the same challenge. And those that have done it have found that it's had an impact on them because they're changing the way they're thinking. They're actually sharing it with their children, not the whole 28 minutes, but bits and bobs of it because it's been impactful for them. And what they felt was that was a way to help their children, their kids, the little people they created that they care about, to have some tools and resources to help them deal with these strange times we've been in for the last, well, more than a year. And hearing people taking that nugget that Brian Tracy came up with and knowing that I was part of the process of helping them help themselves is just what cranks me up. So going back to that Ray Kroc quote about if you're doing it for the money, you're in trouble. But if you do it because you love it and you want to help people, then you're on the right path. So if that's you, congratulations. If it's not you, maybe it's time to rethink about what's important to you. What are your core values? So let's get back to the fork. Why did I call it this session that at this particular time? Well, that's a very good question. And I'm hoping somebody actually thought about it because I'm going to answer it for you. And when I was listening to this podcast, and I'm sorry, Pat, I forgot to write the name of the podcast down so I could promote it. I would do it another time for you for sure. Um, so when I was listening to the podcast, he was talking to one of the people from Pixel, I believe is where he's at, and they're really high level creative people. So who the hell's Pat Hazel? Well, if you don't know, I'm going to tell you. He's a creative genius. He's a comedian, a writer, a performer, director, producer at the high level. So maybe you've heard of a show called Seinfeld. Well, Pat was one of the original writers for that series, that show with Jerry Seinfeld on it, and writing some of the great content. And he's actually brilliantly funny. I saw a post yesterday that Pat put up talking about with the housing authority, I believe, in his country in the U.S. Were mandating you had to put a fence up. So the picture he put up was quite. It was like the fence was flipping off authority. He's just so creative. So think about that. The fork. Not everything is. How do they call it? Not everything we do is productive. Not everything we do pays a commission. Not everything we do is a huge success. But it's part of the process of getting there. Because without some of the things we need to do that don't show up as a payday, they actually support us on the way through that payday. What do I mean? Well, think about music. I'll get back to the fork here shortly, but think about music. If all we heard was low notes for the whole time, no high notes, no pauses, music would be irritating, aggravating, and we probably wouldn't listen. The reason we like music is because it generally does something to impact us on an emotional level at some aspect of our life. About love, energy, I don't know, but energy, it changes our vibration. I'm not a scientist, but I know I like music and I know what it does to me, and it cranks me up and it brings me down and calms me down, and not really bring me down, but calms me down at times when I need that. Because I use Baroque music and music like that. That's or a modern day version of that kind of music where it's just um, there's no singing, there's all instrumental, and there's no words. Because what that does is opens up our cranium, and as we get older, it's harder to be as open minded as we were when we were, between the years of 1 to 7. uh, totally open. They're like sponges. So back to the fork. Imagine that you're eating, I don't know, what's your favorite meal? Pasta? Would it be lasagna? Maybe a steak? So we use the fork, for example, to eat lasagna or a steak and put it into our mouth and eat it and enjoy it. The fork has to travel back empty to the plate, to the dish, the lasagna, the steak, whatever we're eating, so that it can replenish us and give us the bounty. So remember, not everything in life is the big win. Sometimes your fork has to travel empty. I'd like to say that I was the genius behind that explanation, but I wasn't. I heard it on Pat Hazel's podcast. And darn it, I'm going to go see if I can find what it's called because I enjoyed it. It was really quite good. Give me half a second or two. I'll find it. Maybe it's right here. I found it. Now you can enjoy the creative process. So, whether they're in construction or in the medical field or engineering, a truck driver, doesn't matter where you are, but step out of where you are and do something different. So, one of the things you could do different is listen to this podcast, which is called Creativity in Captivity with Pat Hazel. Creativity in Captivity with Pat Hazel. I believe you can find that on all of the podcast channels. I was listening to it on the Apple podcast, but I'm thinking if you were to look that up, you'd find it. It's a it's well worth a listen, and you're going to listen to some highly talented people, and you're going to learn some things about the fork in your life where it needs to be empty sometimes, and that's okay. So, with that, with no background other than this green screen, that's literally a green screen, not um, an image on there this time. I will get that sorted out. Make sure that you have a wonderful day, wonderful week, and a new month is fast approaching. So I encourage you to be wonderful and spell wonderful with a U because you are wonderful. Till we meet again.